For the last 9 years, Canada has been run by exactly the type of contemptible elitists who are, if anything, even more anti-capitalist, anti-nationalist, and anti-industrial state than the typical Canadian. This has set us up against our putative American allies in a manner much deeper than we want to think. And don't be thinking that any of this is lost on Trump. He clearly despises the recently departed Justin and has as much respect for those who elected him as he does for the Democrats, so much like them, who tortured, tormented, and despised him, and the flyover country MAGA middlebrows who were so much wiser in their political instincts than their Ivy League wannabe masters. Canadians are Democrats in Trump's view, except more so. We think that's a virtue. It's not. It's a liability in all general manners. More specifically, it's a liability in relation to the U.S., particularly now. It has also, and more seriously, as if irritating our mighty neighbors is not enough, threatened both Canada's economic viability and even the likelihood that it will survive as a nation. We might also note in that regard that the newly ordained and inevitable grand poobah of the currently wretched but still dangerously powerful Liberals, one Mark Carney, is one of the world's prime advocates of the insane inanities of net zero. He is a man who has planned in writing, not least in his best-selling book Values, the complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. Bye-bye, Alberta. If that's not bad enough, and it is, he's also simultaneously an advocate of the same post-national view of Canada defined by Trudeau Jr. and his moralistic minions. What are we, according to such good thinkers? Nothing. But if anything, the oppressive, patriarchal, white, supremacist, identityless, colonial settler state defined by the progressive ideologues in the think tanks and elite dining rooms in Eastern Canada and the protest encampments on the campuses of Canadian universities. None of this fills the MAGA crowd with admiration, in case it needs to be said. None of it bodes well either for the economy of Canada, doomed to replacement, according to Carney, by the hydrogen, solar, and wind power that either does not exist, that would be hydrogen, or that would doom Canadians to starve and freeze in the dark if it ever came to replace the reliable grid and transportation we all so desperately depend on when it's 40 bloody below. We may, when arguing so expensively and incompetently with the Americans, continue to congratulate ourselves on our comparative righteousness. That diet will become even thinner gruel, however, in a future characterized by their explosive economic growth and our rapid descent toward comparative poverty and irrelevance, green though that pathway may be argued, however falsely to be. Carney, to put it bluntly, is not a man like Justin Trudeau, a second-rater, under the mere influence of the World Economic Forum, that Malthusian, fear-mongering cabal of authoritarian elitists, drunk on the fumes of their own self-righteous delusions. He is, by contrast, a veritable leader of that movement, an organizer par excellence of ESG, stakeholder capitalism, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, and degrowth. Out with the old, the Liberals claim, and in with the new. But the new will be everything Trudeau so terribly was, but a lot more efficiently and with much more sophisticated rationalization. None of this is lost on the MAGA mob insofar as they deign to notice, and they notice enough, it might be reiterated, to shake our foundation. Consider, therefore, with regard to this, something more pointed and illustrative. That would be the current plight of Alberta, and with it, Saskatchewan and even BC, although the latter is still too blind and holier-than-thou socialist to note the true danger that confronts it. The most American of all Canadian provinces, by widespread reputation and self-regard, Alberta is also the polity that Eastern Canada, particularly Quebec, relies on to survive while it pursues its disdainful socialist green agenda. This is the Quebec that is whined and manipulated so effectively for so many decades that its minority bilingual citizenry utterly dominates not only the perennially ruling Liberal Party, but the federal bureaucracy. That constitutes only two such unjust and unproductive advantages among many, by the way, and all that despite the Francophony's strong and lasting separatist leanings. This is the same Eastern Canada and Quebec that regards itself as entitled not only to the so-called transfer payments characterizing the Canadian social contract, much to the disadvantage of the resource-rich West, but that simultaneously assumes and trumpets a moral superiority to the people who earn that transferred money in a manner deeply reminiscent of that more generally assumed by Canadians with respect to Americans. The consequence? No business case for the trade deals or infrastructure projects necessary to supply a self-admittedly desperate Europe and Japan with cheap and reliable Alberta energy. No new, plentiful, and gratefully received pipelines running west to east in Canada. Abject economic dependence, in consequence, for Albertans and Canada itself, as we're now finding out, on the purchasing decisions of the mad MAGA Yanks to the south. And now, that same Alberta is being called upon to sacrifice its artificially and morally limited economy to fight off the looming tariffs of Donald J. Trump, the imposition of which should come as no surprise to anyone the least bit awake. We walked right into this, folks, and boy, we deserved it, but we felt good about ourselves all the way. And what is likely to result? Trump has offered Canada status as the 51st state. If we had a well-constituted country, this would have never happened, or the suggestion would have been laughable. I see damn few people laughing, however, and more is